On the surface, Mobile Legends looks insanely simple. You load in, tap to move, press a few skills, and the game looks like a chaotic but fun brawler where anyone can win. But the moment a complete newbie steps into rank for the first time, everything changes. Suddenly you're dealing with rotations, junglers invading, weird hero matchups, and teammates pinging like your life depends on it. What felt like a casual mobile game turns into a high-speed mental overload where even surviving the first 5 minutes feels like a victory in itself. Welcome back to Mobile Legends News. MLBB isn't just a mobile game anymore. It's a fully matured MOBA shaped by years of balanced updates, hero releases, system updates, and evolving competitive metas. Every role now carries layered responsibilities, from junglers controlling tempo to roamers dictating vision and team fights. So the real question is simple but important. Has MLBB become too complex for new players to realistically learn, or is it still one of the most beginner-friendly competitive games on mobile today? When you actually drop a complete beginner into Mobile Legends in 2026, the first wall they hit isn't mechanics. It's information overload. The game doesn't feel hard because the controls are complicated. It feels hard because there is simply too much happening at once, and very little of it is explained in a way that prepares you for real matches. What looks like a 5v5 brawler on the surface is actually a layered strategy game where every second carries decisions most new players don't even realize exist. The first major barrier is the hero pool. At this point, MLBB has a massive roster, and every hero isn't just a different character. It's a different rule set. A beginner might think, I'll just pick whoever looks cool. But the game immediately punishes that mindset. You're suddenly dealing with assassins that delete you with one combo, tanks that feel unkillable, mages that control space with zoning skills, marksmen that scale into late-game monsters, and supports that quietly decide whether your team survives fights or collapses instantly. The problem isn't just learning what each hero does. It's understanding what they want to do in the match. And that's where roles come in. In theory, the roles sound simple. Tank, mage, marksman, assassin, fighter, support. But in practice, each role carries different expectations. A jungler isn't just farming jungle monsters. They're controlling tempo, timing objectives, and deciding when the team should fight. A roamer isn't just helping lanes, they're tracking enemy movement, enabling vision, and setting up engages. Even a marksman, which looks like the simplest role, with just farming and shooting, actually requires positioning discipline, wave awareness, and timing so precise that one mistake can delete your entire impact for the next 10 minutes. For a beginner, this creates a strange feeling. You're playing the game correctly mechanically, but still losing constantly because you don't understand why things are happening around you. Then comes itemization, and this is one of the biggest hidden skill gaps. New players often assume there is a best build for each hero, like a fixed recipe, but MLBB doesn't work like that anymore. Item builds are highly situational, and understanding them requires reading the match in real time. Are you facing heavy burst damage? You need defensive adaptation. Is the enemy healing too much? Anti-heal becomes mandatory. Are you ahead? You might need damage snowball items instead of defensive safety. Even boot choices can completely change how your hero functions. The problem is that beginners are not just unaware of item effects, they don't yet understand threat evaluation. They don't know which enemy is actually the win condition, which damage type is dominating, or which item spikes matter most at different stages of the game. So they follow preset builds. And while that might work in low-level matches, it quickly becomes a disadvantage once opponents start adapting. This is where MLBB quietly shifts from build your hero to build against the match. And that shift is one of the first real skill barriers new players hit. But even if a beginner somehow survives hero confusion and item complexity, the real difficulty spike comes from macro understanding. This is where the game stops being about individual mechanics and starts being about map-wide awareness, rotations, objectives, lane control. These are the invisible systems that decide most matches long before the final teamfight happens. Rotations are especially brutal for beginners because the game never directly teaches them. A new player might stay in their lane, farming minions, thinking they're doing fine, while the entire enemy team rotates mid, takes turtle, invades jungle, and suddenly the game is lost without them even realizing how it happened. Understanding when to leave lane, when to help contest objectives, and when to pressure a tower instead of chasing kills is a skill that takes time. And unfortunately, most beginners only learn it after losing multiple matches in confusing ways. Objectives are another major knowledge gap. Turtle, Lord, buff timing, and lane pressure. All of these are critical to winning, but the game doesn't clearly explain their priority system. Beginners often think kills matter most, because kills are visible, satisfying, and rewarded with gold. But in reality, objectives are what creates structural advantage. A team that loses fights but secures objectives can in fact still win. A team that gets kills but ignores objectives often slowly loses control of the map until they collapse later. That concept is not obvious to new players, and it's one of the biggest reasons early games feel chaotic. Then there's teamfight positioning, which might be the most punishing concept for beginners. In low experience matches, players often clump together or chase fights blindly. But MLBB teamfights are actually spacing puzzles. Marksmen need safe angles, mages need distance control, tanks need to absorb initiation at the right moment, not too early or too late. Assassins need timing windows to enter and exit fights without getting instantly deleted. A beginner usually just sees a cluster of enemies and presses skills randomly, not realizing that positioning mistakes are what decide whether they deal damage or instantly disappear. Draft awareness adds another layer of difficulty. Even though beginners barely notice it at all, in ranked especially, team compositions matter heavily. A team without frontline often collapses in fights. A team without damage can't finish objectives. A team with too many late-game heroes might struggle early and never recover. But new players usually pick heroes based on preference, not composition balance, which leads to drafts that are structurally weak before the game even starts. And because matchmaking doesn't prevent these situations at low ranks, beginners often lose without understanding that the issue started at hero selection, not just gameplay execution. And speaking of matchmaking, that's another huge barrier that often gets overlooked. Early ranked games in MLBB are not always clean, beginner-only environments. The system can place new players with or against Smurfs, returning veterans, or highly experienced players climbing new accounts. This creates extreme inconsistency. One game feels manageable, the next feels impossible. One match you're learning slowly, the next you're getting deleted under tower before you can even react. For a beginner, this inconsistency is mentally exhausting because it prevents stable learning. You don't get gradual difficulty, you get spikes of chaos. On top of that, even classic modes don't fully shield new players from experienced gameplay patterns. Smurfs often play aggressively, no rotations, and punish mistakes instantly. So instead of learning in a controlled environment, beginners are sometimes forced into high-level situations without understanding the fundamentals yet. This is one of the reasons many new players feel like the game is unfair early on, and not because it is, but because the learning environment isn't linear. And finally, tutorials in MLBB only cover the absolute basics. They teach movement, skills, and maybe a simple explanation of objectives. But they don't bridge the gap between knowledge and real decision making. There's no deep explanation of when to rotate, why certain fights should be avoided, or how to read enemy movements across the map. So beginners enter real matches with mechanical understanding but no strategic context. That gap is where most early frustration really comes from. So basically, at its core, Mobile Legends is still one of the most accessible competitive games you can download and start instantly on mobile. The controls are simple, the matches are fast, and the entry barrier looks low. But true competence is a different story entirely. In the current meta, success isn't just about mechanics. It's about decision making, map awareness, and adapting to constantly shifting situations. The deeper you go, the more you realize the game rewards knowledge just as much as it rewards skill. Now, I want to hear from you. Think back to your very first matches in MLBB. What confused you the most? Was it getting constantly ganked, not knowing when to rotate, or just feeling lost in teamfights? Share your experiences in the comments, and the real question here is, should the game improve its onboarding for players? Or is this level of complexity what keeps MLBB competitive and exciting? Till next time!